Welcome to the Mental Health Multiverse.
We're your hosts,
HB
and LB.
We'll be breaking down some of our favorite movies and TV shows as they relate to mental health, self-healing, and overall wellness, while also breaking stigmas, shedding light on misinterpretations, and helping you understand yourself a little better.
If you're also on a healing journey and enjoy pop culture, stick around. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of MHM. What's our name again?
Mental Health Multiverse.
Yes, thank you for tuning into another episode of Mental Health Multiverse. Today we are talking about Anna and Elsa from Frozen. Boop, 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 boop. And we are joined by a very special guest, which is very exciting.
Yes, my sister Hallie is here. So another HB in the house.
Yay, hello.
I'm not the only HB. So Hallie is my younger sister, 6 years younger than me. And I feel like I talk about her a lot. And she probably, I know that she's only listened to a couple episodes. So she's probably like, what do you talk about me with? Our audience knows that I've thrown you down the stairs. So there's that.
Getting right to it.
Yeah, getting right to it. And you were like kind of featured in our was that a bonus episode or was it our Moana?
Oh yeah, the
episode?
Moana musical episode. We were talking about how the crab song was like giving you super capitalist vibes, and you were not happy with it.
I think I think
the
that
movie
was just
scared me.
I think I think that was a bonus episode, if I'm not mistaken. So if you want to hear Hallie chime in, because I was just like in a hotel room with her when we were recording that, and become a patron and listen to that.
But y'all might know we refer to her as Little HB because she has done our music. So our intro and outro music was done by the amazing Hallie Boddy.
Yes,
thank you
little HB. Yeah. So the intro music before this episode and our outro music at the end, that was created by my little sister Hallie, who is a musician and an audio engineer. So that is what she does for a living out in LA. And she has dreams and aspirations to encourage and empower women in audio, which is also very exciting. So that is my little sister. I feel like I always have a lot to say about like people who come on, but really with Hallie, it's just like, we'll probably talk a lot about our relationship throughout this episode as it relates to like sisterly relationships. Something that Marissa and I talk about a lot, LB and I talk about a lot, is like that all sibling dynamics are different. And so like Hallie and I have a dynamic that is very much like we weren't that close when we were little, but we also were. It was like we were and we weren't. It's kind of weird. Because we're 6 years apart, it was easy for me to not like her because she was so much younger than me that I was just like always annoyed just by her existence, right? But also I felt very protective of her. And something I talked about in a different episode that I want to ask you, Hallie, is like, do you remember when I used to sleep in your room instead of my own room, like in the bunk beds, and read you Harry Potter every night?
I do. It's so funny that you bring that up because I was just talking to Joe, my wife, about that. And she was like, didn't she have her own room? Why was she sleeping in yours? And I was like, well, I had a bunk bed. And I don't know. She would just like keep me company, I guess.
It's because we had it was like part of it was like protection for myself and protection for you, just because I was like a little, like we had like it wasn't a difficult childhood, but there were parts of our childhood that were tumultuous and traumatic, and I think it was part for me and part for you, you know what I mean? Like I was doing it because I was scared and also needed like a little bit of an escape, but I also like wanted to protect you from feeling scared and alone like I did. So that's big sister vibes. But like I said, every sibling dynamic is different. So like Hallie and I got closer after we were more in our adulthood, I would say. We've always been like close in terms of we played video games together, we watched movies together. I introduced her to South Park when she was far too young to know what South Park is. I feel like I introduced you to so many things that you should not have seen at the ages that you saw them, because I was too young to be watching them, and then you were 6 years younger than me watching the same things. So so I feel like those are the ways in which we were close. And we also have matching sister tattoos. And the reason that we got these tattoos, they are, for people who cannot see, it's a cassette tape, and mine says Heather's Mix in Hallie's handwriting, and Hallie's says Hallie's Mix in my handwriting, like we gave each other permanent mixtapes. And we decided on, isn't that cute? Yeah.
Cute.
We decided on these tattoos because we felt like when we were trying to decide on a sibling tattoo, it was really hard for us to figure something out that like we both related to, that was like deeply meaningful and not just like some nerdy thing that we did together. And like music is definitely a big thing. And obviously like Hallie is a musician and now is into audio, so it's like even bigger for her than it is for me. But like when we were growing up, I used to like force her to listen to the same music that I listened to, and I would like record songs off the radio and play DJ and be like, and coming up next is da 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 by so and so, and like, you know, so
cute.
we would choreograph dance routines. Just like music was definitely a big part of our relationship growing up. So that's why that's our relationship in a nutshell. So and also something that we've talked about before too that may come up, but since you're here, I just want to let you know that we've talked about this, is how like we fight so hard and get so annoyed with each other, but there's always an underlying like everything is fine. You know what I mean? Like we get so like, especially when we're together, I feel like this is normal for siblings, but maybe it's not. I don't know. But like we just get it under each other's skin really easy. And then, but it's not like we're ever actually mad at each other. It's just like that sibling, like, everything you're doing is making me so mad right now. But we also have that underlying like, but also I love you, and I, you know.
Yeah, I feel like we can say anything to each other, but it's like sometimes that's not the best thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something I said, I think maybe in my speech at your wedding about Joanna, is that like she kind of got thrown into us going on a cruise together. It was like me, you, and mom went on a cruise, and just like that, the way that Joanna just like witnessed us in existence with each other.
Yeah,
like,
so early in my relationship with her.
Yeah, the three of us just like literally fighting about everything.
No, I think it like the wedding was a big thing that made me realize I don't know, I have a lot of cool friends in my life that I felt are very close to me, but I don't know, you really stepped up at my wedding, and I just really felt the true support from you, and I'm trying to think of the right word, just unconditional love for me that you have. So it was definitely really nice and special, and you were
What did I
like
do?
my rock. I don't know, I feel like I was your like you were my punching bag, you were my sanity. Like you saved the day with the bra.
I did. I gave Hallie my bra.
I was like, it's not gonna fit. She's like, just put it on. And like that was like when we were supposed to be leaving. Like yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad. So
I love that. That's so cute. I have a younger brother who's also 6.5 years younger, and whenever she brings up Hallie, most of the time I bring up my little brother, because it feels like our sibling dynamic is so different. Because like almost as soon as he was born and my parents had to go back to work or whatever, it was like I was the designated caretaker. So I saw him more as like baggage and a burden. And I like was really resentful of him, especially because then as we were getting older, it felt like I had all of these chores and responsibilities, and they babied him and they let him just play video games. They like didn't get on him as much as they were getting on me, mainly probably because I'm the eldest, and I had like apparently more capability to do all these things, even though I was doing them at his age too. Whatever, it's fine. So
well,
but I feel
Hallie
like
and I was just gonna say, Hallie and I can tell you that our parents definitely had favorites growing up too. Which they will absolutely deny to this day. But like my dad, Hallie was my dad's favorite because she was a tomboy, and he would like buy her everything she wanted, and he would like take her on these like really fun adventures. They would go to like East Fork Lake together, which is like this big lake, and they would go like they just like and I wasn't like jealous by any means, but it was just like very evident that like my dad was like, this is the son I've always wanted. And like, you know, it's like very much like indulged in her like indulged dad really indulged in your like the activities that you wanted to do. Like he liked that you were into skateboarding and dirt bikes and like that kind of thing, which is great for you to have growing up a parent that wasn't like, you must abide by societal norms of being a girl. Like, you know, you definitely like had that like rough and tough thing about you, and dad really embraced that and enjoyed it. And then like for me, mom was very much like, Heather is my angel, and she's so smart, and she's in performing arts and like
grades.
yeah, she goes exactly. So it's like our parents definitely had like clear favorites growing up, but at least it was like I was my mom's and Hallie was my dad's, and like they both didn't like they weren't focusing on like one over the other, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I was the dog's favorite, so I guess that was cool. It was me and my dog against the world. Which is, I don't know, it's fun. But yeah, now that we're older, he's about to graduate college, which is like freaking crazy. We've definitely gotten closer. Like we've talked about our parents. He's recognized the ways in which him being the favorite, or like, yeah, him being the favorite was not so great for me, but then in the same way it wasn't great for him, because I think he was getting it from both sides of my parents. Like my parents in a nutshell are the kind of people who should have been divorced but don't, and it's just one of those things. So anyway, he would hear like both of them bitching about each other, and then like he couldn't really take a side, and then at the same time they would like criticize him in the same way they would criticize me, and it was just like, I don't know, it was just like a whole thing. And something I didn't realize until we were talking about it was they used to compare him to me a lot in terms of grades and things like that, I guess, because I don't know, my mom, for some reason my mom likes to think life came easy to me, like, and but it was just because I didn't bitch and complain in the same way that she did about like things. So I guess because my brother was like struggling to get like his college admissions worked out and like all of the scholarship things worked out, she'd be like, obviously you're doing something wrong and you need to talk to Marissa, but not just like talk to Marissa to get advice. It's talk to Marissa so she'll do it for you. So then that's where that comes back around. But it's weird.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. Yeah, like how different, how every sibling dynamic is different, but then also how each sibling's experience is different. I think Heather, you and I have similar-ish experiences because we're the eldest, but Hallie, I am interested in getting like your perspective being younger and stuff.
Definitely to compare it to Frozen, like I definitely was probably sheltered from a lot of things that Heather was exposed to. I mean, parallel, but not exactly the same. It's not like Heather was the problem, but you know, like I feel like she knew about things that I didn't know, and she was trying to protect my experience, but you know, she could only do so much. And I feel like in a way that I don't know if it made me tougher or that's just my personality type, but I feel like once I was getting older,
once I wasn't around anymore.
Yeah, once we weren't around anymore, I really feel like I had to just stand up for myself, and I think Heather maybe influenced and taught me to just, I don't know, be able to handle things a certain way.
We are very different though, and I think that's something that, you know, some siblings are like super similar. They grow up like, there are ways in which we are very similar, but there are also ways in which we are very different. And I think the ways in which, even though we were raised by the same two people in the same household and had the same like technical upbringing, like I'm a lot more passive about things, and I tend to try to I'm like more of like a I'm getting better about this, but like I have that people pleasing sort of ideology of like trying to be trying to please everyone so that everything stays mediated, right? Like, I don't want to rock the boat, I don't want anything. And so like that's a coping mechanism that I developed early on, was like that people pleasing sort of thing, that I am definitely like getting out of, but it is something that I developed. And I feel like Hallie is kind of the opposite of that, where she's got this like very her sort of way of dealing with things is to confront them head on and just sort of be like, this is what's bothering me. If we don't get it out of the way now, like we can't move forward, you know, to almost a point where she can be like really aggressive sometimes, you know. So it's like, I think that's also why we fight a lot, is because we have those very different like ideas of dealing with problems. So like sometimes it'll just be like, I'm gonna say this thing that's pissing me off, and I'm like, okay, but also like, why did you have to say that, you know?
Yeah, I definitely am very confrontational and very, very much the handle confrontation the opposite of you.
Yeah. But anyway, so I think we can move forward for the purposes of this conversation to talk about our personal experiences with Frozen. So or actually, Hallie, do you want to give us like a little mild synopsis of Frozen before we talk about, like, dive deep into it?
Sure, I can do that.
In your best Olaf voice.
I was when I was rewatching it, I was like, I didn't realize it took so long for Olaf to come, because I feel like that's all the kids' favorite character. So I thought that was interesting. But Frozen is a Disney movie that takes place in Arendelle, and it's about two sisters. One of them has powers where she can turn everything into snow, or she just, I don't know, what she can just turn things into ice into snow. And at a young age, she hurt her little sister, so that her parents decided that she needed to keep it a secret, and they locked the doors of the castle. And then fast forward, the parents die. And
dun, dun, dun.
I think she's of age. Elsa's
her
of
coronation.
Age. Yeah, she's of age. It's her coronation to become the queen. So they open the gates. Everything is great, but then she has a meltdown because her sister decides she wants to get married to a man she just met that day, and she reveals her powers to the world. So they think she's a monster. She runs away and hides and lives her best life. Cue Let It Go. Adina Menzel singing it beautifully. Yeah. Oh, and that, you know, the reveal of her new fit and her braid, she just really came into herself in that moment. They go to find her. They meet Olaf and the Han. What? Wait, no. Hans is the, what's the one? Kristoff. Yes, they find Kristoff. They go on an adventure to find her and bring her back. She doesn't want to come back, and then she freezes this little sister's heart, and they need to figure out what's wrong. So they go, somehow the troll family is also what is his name again? Kristoff's parents. He was raised by the trolls that initially told her to hide her powers. And my mind was frozen. They tell him it's true, an act of true love will thaw her heart. So they go to Hans, but they realize Hans was a snake. So it takes the sister Elsa coming back and Anna going in front of her to save her to realize like the act was an act of true love. And so it was the sister love, not any romantic, true love's kiss. Yeah, romantic love, which I love, because I feel like that's not often that Disney movies don't make it about true love's kiss,
which we just talked about at length in our Giselle episode.
So that's pretty much it. They thaw the world, or they thaw Arendelle and live happily ever after, kind of.
Yeah Sure, for the most part, until Frozen 2.
Right, but I haven't seen that one, so in my head they live happily ever after.
Which, you should see, just for it's interesting because they go more into like Elsa's past and like her powers and stuff, and I think that is pretty interesting. But yes, thank you for that synopsis. So my first experience with the movie, I saw it 3 times when it came out. The first was, I'm trying to remember if this was the year my best friend, who I call my sister interchangeably. I was hoping to get her on the podcast, but it's okay because I thought it'd be fun to have like a little sister episode. But our schedules didn't line up. It's okay. Anyway, we have matching tattoos too. We have ours also has kind of a deepish meaning, but I can't show you because it's on my ankle, but it's the lambda symbol, the wavelength symbol, because we're always talking about how we're on the same wavelength. So
Cute.
I know, it's so cute. I don't remember if it's the year she split her lip open and we had to see it. We saw it in theaters together, but I know I saw it twice with her, and then I think once with my family. And I remember just like loving it right away. I related to Elsa so much, and like the whole, conceal, don't feel, like, especially with my parents and our family dynamic, it was very much like emotions like sadness and anger, or even just like exuberance and joy, are not to be seen. It was very much like, just be a blank slate because you are more acceptable that way. And so yeah, I just definitely related to all of the struggles that she was going through and trying to like figure out this really awesome gift that she has, but not one, being told that it's a curse and is dangerous, and all of the like limiting beliefs that she develops around that, and the fear she develops around herself and the world. And then just the journey she goes on to embrace that, like, she's not what people perceive her to be or how she has perceived herself, and like that shift in her perspective of herself, something I relate to a lot and I really love. And I just found Anna really annoying the first couple times, but now as an adult I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. I can see, I understand. I mean, and we'll get into this, but it's like her attachment style is very like anxious and like a little bit codependent, which makes sense given that she was kind of ignored. Like Elsa got a lot of attention, it seems like, and all she wanted was like her sister back, and all she wanted was to be seen, acknowledged, and noticed, which like she has a whole song about in the coronation song that I can't remember now off the top of my head. So it makes sense, but I just found her like
forever.
Yeah, I just found her really like desperate and clingy and needy, and I was like, eh.
I definitely really liked Elsa as well. So if we're trying to, if I'm supposed to be Anna because I'm the younger sister, that's a no.
No, I am Anna. I think it's pretty clear that I am Anna out of our sibling relationship, even though, like you said, like Elsa like had the sort of like, oh, I'm gonna do this because I'm protecting my little sister. However, like I love Anna. I love Anna, and I think like the thing I love most about Anna is that she is just like authenticity through and through. Like she is just like, she's weird and she's awkward, but she also is just herself, and she's like really quirky. And I think of all the Disney princesses, like if I really had to sit and think and relate to a Disney princesses, it's like, I really see myself in Moana. I really see myself in Esmeralda. Like I see myself in all these princesses, but like, is Anna who my real true personality is the closest to? Maybe.
Yeah, and I feel like you wouldn't run away and go rogue as easily as I probably would.
Yeah, so true. So you're the wayward child, as our Nana puts it. Hallie is the wayward child. And yeah, so I love Anna, and like I relate to her because I also do have that like sort of anxious attachment style and that sort of like fear of like I think hers is definitely like a fear of the people who she cares about leaving her, that like fear of abandonment, because it happened. Like her worst fear happened, which was that her parents died and her sister shut her out. She had no one for years, and when she was finally able to like have the opportunity to meet people and connect with them, I think of course she like attached to this person who seemed like the perfect person for her. He seemed awkward, he seemed quirky as well, but it was like an act just to sort of get on her side, like get her to trust him and all of that.
Yeah.
But anyway, all that to say, like, love Anna. I don't know that I loved her the first time I saw it. And I think it's funny that you two like Elsa, because in this rewatch, I think I was so, maybe it's because I was relating to Anna a lot because of what I'm going through in my life right now, you know, with the breakup and whatever. But I just saw Elsa as very cold, which I think is funny because her powers are literally ice. And I was like, she's just so cold. And I know that that is like her trauma response to whatever she's going through. But to have a sister who doesn't talk to you, who doesn't tell you what she's going through, who literally shuts you out, like, and pushes people away so hard, it was like, that to me was like, I couldn't imagine having a sibling relationship like that. You know what I mean?
That's
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, my brother and I, we like did not talk about feelings, and like I mentioned earlier, that's something we're kind of figuring out and working through. Like he doesn't know about this podcast. He doesn't know about like the work I do on Instagram or anything like that. So I relate to Elsa in that my parents instilled these limiting beliefs in myself, that I was a burden and I can't take up too much space, and to just like to be kind of cold and reserved and like shut myself off from the world, because that is the best way to exist in their opinion. And that's taken a lot of work to outgrow. And at the time of watching the movie for the first couple of times, I really loved Elsa's song, like Let It Go, where she just is, you know, out, no rules, no right, no wrong, none of that. Like she's free to be herself. And that's something I had always aspired to have, and now I do, and it is really nice. But anyway,
Yeah. Our first time, Hallie, I'm 90% sure we saw this movie together for the first time. Do you agree? I think we saw it at the theater, and like it came out in November of 2013. So I would have already been in New York, but I think I was home for Thanksgiving maybe, or Christmas maybe.
I think you might be right, because I think I also saw it twice, and I think I saw it with you, and then I saw it with some friends, because I remember obnoxiously dancing to the credit scene when it's Demi's version of Let It Go.
Demi Lovato.
Yeah.
Yeah. We yeah, I'm 90% sure we saw this together, and I think I extra appreciated that it was like a sister movie that I got to see with you. Like it was about sister love and not about romantic love. Because I'm pretty sure that we saw it with Mom. Like it was like we all went as a family. You know. And then the song Let It Go was everywhere. And as a person who works with kids, I hated it. Not because it's a bad song, but because it was the only song that any child wanted to listen to at any point in time. And the little boy I was babysitting for at the time, which is not the current family that I have and talk about, but a different kid who I had in 2013. Yeah. He was obsessed and would like listen to it on repeat every day. And I like the soundtrack. I think it's a great soundtrack. I know Hallie wants to talk about the soundtrack, but I think another reason that I like Anna is because she's an alto. She's got my vocal range. And so I do like to sing Love is an Open Door as a duet, like with my, like if Love is an Open Door is an option for a duet, I really like to sing that for karaoke, and also for the first time in forever singing Anna's part as karaoke. Like I obviously love karaoke, and so like those are two karaoke songs from the soundtrack that I have adopted into my arsenal when I realized like Love is an Open Door is perfectly within my vocal range. I can also sing both parts because, you know, deep voice or whatever, but yeah.
I think it's crazy the movie came out in 2013, because I feel like, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but just based off of, I work for Disney on Ice sometimes, and based off of the way that it's the finale in Disney on Ice, and kids still to this day love it so much, I'm like, this movie had an impact. Like I can't believe it came out in 2013 because kids still dress up as Elsa. And I mean, I know kids dress up as Cinderella and then it came out in the 50s, but like, but kids really love this movie. It's like the most recent movie that I feel like has made a strong impact on children and the Disney universe. And when they would sing it I know you were tired of hearing it, but that wasn't my experience. And when they would sing that song during Disney on Ice, all the little kids would sing too, and it would make me cry. It was so cute. Just
Aww.
a room, just imagine an arena full of children singing the chorus of that song is so cute.
That is cute.
That's really precious. No, and also we had Chloe on for our Cinderella episode, and she has her own character hiring business where you can hire characters to like go perform at children's birthday parties. And according to her, Elsa is the most requested, like the number one most requested princess to have at a birthday party. Like it is Elsa, Elsa, Elsa. And like, you know, sometimes Chloe does Elsa and she's like, I don't want to be Elsa. I want to be, you know, like put me in, let me be Cindy, let me be someone else. But yeah, like I think like, I don't know, I can't speak as to why, but it is definitely like a phenomenon, and like little girls do still love Elsa, and like there's something very powerful about her, you know. She is one thing that I do like about Elsa. She is the most independent princess.
I was gonna say she's strong, independent woman.
She's a queen, you know, like she's a queen. She does not have a romantic partner. Which I think some people are doing like the gay coding of Elsa of like she's like a queer icon or whatever. But like, you know, I think that there's a lot of like I think there's a lot to say about the fact that like kids are obsessed with this character who is she is so powerful, and she doesn't have that like romantic partner, and she doesn't have like, and she just has this like sort of grounded, even though she is very cold, like I said, and even though she had all of those self-doubts and everything that we've kind of touched on already, like she is very empowered through her powers by the end. And I think that that's perhaps what the kids take away from it. I'm not really sure, but I do think if there is something to be said about the fact that this is now 10 years old and still is the cultural phenomenon that it is.
I think there is a natural pull in this generation of children that I love toward like the really strong character. Like when Encanto came out, they did a lot of marketing and a lot of merch for Isabella, the just like pretty one with the flowers, but all the kids wanted Luisa, the really you know, the strong character. And I think it's just a testament that I think that there's like, I don't know, there's just like a shift, and kids really just love strong women. So give us more strong women in media who don't need a man or whatever. So anyway, before we get into like themes and takeaways, Hallie, I know like because you have to go soonish, I want you to feel like you were able to say everything you wanted to say. So take it away.
I feel like I think about the me watching it in 2013, which is the Hallie that just graduated high school. So I was a lot younger and very much confused and concerned about what I wanted to do with my life. So I think that when I watched it at that time, it was maybe at first it was kind of a distraction, and I was like excited and because Demi sang on it, and it was just a nice little escape. But I think I also really liked how sure Elsa was of herself, and I think that's why I really related to her and really admired her, and just really liked that movie for, even though I was at the time 18 years old, like why am I so obsessed with this Disney movie? But yeah, I think that now looking back, it's like it's great that it's become so iconic, and that it is centered around sisterly love rather than a romantic partner thing. And I just love that. I love that kids love it. I love that it's so strong and powerful, and that is what people have to look up to.
Yeah. I like the movie for all of the reasons you just said too. I think it was a different, how do I say it? Because I'm also thinking like Brave came out around the same time. So I think it was just an era where they were focusing less on romantic love and like finding a person and finding your true love or whatever, more focused on like reclaiming self-love, which I think is really cool. But I think that's also the reason why I don't love Anna as much as I would like to, because I do think personality wise I am Anna, just like a little awkward and quirky and like I don't know, like whenever the scene when she's talking to Hans and they're having their little moment and she's like gesturing and like smacks him in the face, like that's just something I could see myself doing. But I think a reason why I didn't love her as much is because it was just like she meets Hans, falls in love, thinks he's her one true love, and then Elsa's like, you can't marry a man you just met. But then she meets Kristoff and they've known each other for maybe 2 days. And she's like, oh my God. And I'm like, woman, please no, please stop. But I mean, I do love Kristoff. He's very sweet and cute. And I love his song in Frozen too. I think it's just so cheesy and ridiculous and wonderful.
I love Sven.
Sven. Yeah. Who's the funky looking doggy? Sven. And who's the reindeer? Sven. No, they're great. Heather, what about you? What were some of like the main messages or takeaways that you got from the movie?
I mean, pretty much all of the same things that y'all have said. I think something that I really took away from it this time. So, I actually haven't watched this movie in a really long time. And like I said, I think like working with kids kind of left the soundtrack with like not really a sour taste in my mouth, but you just know you hear the same thing over and over again, you get sick of it. So it had been a while since I had seen it, and I had kind of written this movie off as like not as like a Disney movie that I didn't really like, you know what I mean? Like, it just like was never one of my favorites. So, I look back to like my favorites for, like Moana and the ones that I like really love. And upon rewatching this time, it just kind of like reminded me of that it is actually a very good movie and that it does have a lot of merit as like being a good like staple. And something that I took away from it this time, this like overarching theme of like fear, like Elsa being afraid to use her powers and Anna being afraid to be alone. And like something that I kind of took away from it this time that felt really empowering for me watching, like I said, given what I'm kind of going through right now, is that love is the antithesis of fear. But it doesn't have to be romantic love, right? Like just loving yourself can be that, or like loving your sibling, loving like a loving relationship, like love being the antithesis of fear. Like love can be letting, like when you're afraid to let go of something, like love can be saying like, okay, this is the best thing for me right now. Or like with Elsa, like learning to love her powers rather than be afraid of them, those kinds of things. I really took that away from the movie this time. And also relating that to sort of like a sense of acceptance too, like love, fear, and acceptance all kind of tied into one.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something Elsa struggles with, is like self-acceptance, but then also feeling accepted by others because of her powers. Like even though they were well-intentioned, her parents definitely instilled the belief that like you're just all of these like really negative beliefs about herself and her powers, and that she couldn't go out until it was under control. Which they weren't really trying to teach her control. They were trying to teach her how to hide it, right? Like to not to conceal, don't feel. And that's not the same as controlling.
Right.
I actually found a note in my phone from April of 2021 about Elsa's fear of failure. And I wrote down that Elsa says I can't when Anna's like, we can like when she finds her at the castle, the ice castle, and she's like, we can figure this out together, like let's go down and fix all of this. And Elsa's like, I can't, in
She
response
actually
to,
sings it.
oh, excuse me. Yeah, she sings it in a big like maelstrom of a snowstorm. And but she's singing it in response to undoing something that she's done, but she won't even try because she's so scared of failing, and she's scared of making it worse, while projecting a lot of those like self-limiting beliefs, because she believes herself and her powers to be too dangerous and uncontrollable. And I think, first of all, there are so many parallels that could be made between that and like a healing journey in general. But I just wanted to highlight that it, like, how quickly and how easily it is to just say I can't, and how sometimes behind that, what some may see as a defeatist attitude is actually just fear, versus like an actual like, versus saying like I don't have the capability to do the thing. And sometimes, Heather, like what you're saying, it takes another person reflecting and giving the love that we need for ourselves to believe we can do something, or at least give us the love, encouragement, support, and space to just try. Because I think that was like Elsa's whole thing, was she couldn't really like, she wasn't given, other than the room that she was in, to really try. It was just like, you either are not showing your powers at all, or you're on the complete other side of everything and it's like out of control. And there was no opportunity for her to work even toward like control. It was just like one or the other. So it is really sweet that Anna is so patient and so kind, and really loves Elsa despite, I mean, however many years it's been since the incident when they were kids. And I think that is really sweet, because there's another part of me that would have been like, you don't have like family. There's another part of me that's like, family isn't like a requirement to stick with people who haven't been there for you or have treated you poorly. But in this movie and in this instance, I think it's actually really sweet that despite everything, Anna's still there for Elsa. And I think mainly it's because in some kind of way, maybe once Elsa's powers are revealed, Anna realizes the struggle that Elsa was going through the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, is like hiding what you're going through. Like that's a big kind of parallel in the movie, and something that is probably relatable to a lot of people, is just like not asking for help or not knowing how to ask for help, and trying to put on a mask and seem like you know what's going on, or not even being an imposter, but more so just like pretending to be okay, or like pretending to be somebody that you're not.
Yeah. Because I mean, in Elsa's song, God, now I can't remember what it's called, but she's like repeating to herself, you know, conceal, don't feel, be the good girl you always have to be, put on a show, don't let them know. And that's like something she's heard repeatedly as a kid. And I think as a kid, that's like so confusing, because you don't know how to not be yourself. Like I think kids are born with an innate sense of authenticity, and just, yeah, authenticity and being genuine. And it's not it. And then as we grow up, we are told to be one way, or to fit into society standard this way, or like, yeah, hiding and is what is acceptable. And I think that can then create a lot of perfectionism and people pleasing, because they're learning that hiding to make other people happy, or because that's what other people told us will make us, because what other people have told us will make us like better or more acceptable.
This is something that I struggle with, like as a recovering people pleaser who is a like nanny and helps like raise children. I really struggle, and this is like, if I ever become a parent, I know I will struggle with this as well, is like I really struggle with like when the kids are doing something that is like not normal. I'll put that in quotes, right? Like when they're so like for example, the little boy I babysit, he doesn't sometimes like respond to people. And it really bothers me because I'm like, you need to acknowledge like your friend just said hello to you. Like you need to like acknowledge that your friend said hello. Like just like these little things that I notice that I like try to change about them because it will help them fit in more, you know what I mean? And like and I notice myself doing that sometimes where I'm like, oh, you just did this thing that was like not okay. And then there's a part of me that's like, okay, was it actually not okay? Or was I taught that it's not okay? So now I'm teaching them that it's not okay. Like, of course, it's not okay to hit and it's not okay to, do like there are things that it is not okay to do. But like, is this specific thing worth bringing up about not being okay? And I know that like it is societal conditioning that's like in me. And then I'm looking at the kids that I'm babysitting and being like, oh, am I just like projecting onto them the things that I had learned? And like, because I want them to be as quote unquote normal as possible because I wasn't normal, like those kinds of things. So it's very interesting to see. But one thing that I really like about Anna is that she maintained that authenticity, that her like childlike wonder into her adulthood, whereas like Elsa, something that we talk about on this podcast a lot, like Elsa didn't really get to be a kid. Like we got to see her be a kid with her sister for a very brief period of time at the beginning, and then once her parents were like, you have to hide this, she didn't play with her sister anymore. She wouldn't. And that's what the whole song "Do You Want to Build a Snowman" is about, right? Like
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just that parallel of like Elsa didn't get to be a kid and Anna did, and that does sometimes fall as a burden onto the older sibling because of what we talked about at the beginning of like the older sibling is sometimes protecting the younger sibling from whatever it is that they need or think that they need protecting from. And the older sibling sometimes doesn't get to be a kid so that the younger sibling can.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
Not saying that's what happened with me and Hallie, although in some ways it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely what happened with me and my brother, not really by my choice, but those were just the circumstances that they were. And I mean, I think in a lot of ways it was beneficial for him because I love my brother so much and he is a very like he's a sensitive boy. So I think he needed that. And I am now as an adult like reclaiming my inner child and inner teen and all of that stuff, and I think I would like to get to a point where I can ask him about all of those kinds of things too, but for right now he seems okay. He seems good.
Yeah.
Hallie, I know you have to go soon, so if it's okay, we might do a quick little pivot into the soundtrack and then Heather and I can wrap up with more like messages and takeaways if that's okay.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay. You mentioned that you really like the soundtrack. Tell me more about what you love about the soundtrack.
I think it's iconic. They had Idina Menzel not only voice Elsa but sing her parts because I feel like sometimes they'll just have a singer sing the parts.
Yeah.
I really love Demi Lovato. I have a strange obsession with her. So the fact that she was on there really felt like stars were aligning. Um I think yeah, like Heather said, like all the songs are very singable and catchy, which is typical with Disney soundtracks, but I feel like specifically these ones were just good. I don't know, they just sounded good and like sounded like you could listen to them. But mostly it was Demi.
One a note that I have about Idina Menzel voicing Elsa is that she has a very distinct singing voice, like a very clear, distinct singing voice. So you can obviously tell, like, for the most part, I feel like when she sings, a lot of her songs have the same like feel to them. Like you're like, oh, that's Idina Menzel. Like when she's singing in Wicked, when she's singing in, like they all feel like have similar feels to them. But what I appreciate is that her voice acting, you can't really tell that it's her voicing Elsa when she is using her speaking voice, which I think is kind of cool, because it's like you can't sometimes really help or control how you sound when you sing. That's just like how you sound when you sing. She's got a very distinct singing voice. But if we took her singing out of it, like I wouldn't just like, my ear wouldn't pick up on the fact that it was her voicing Elsa. Like it does sound like it I think she does a good job with her voice acting there.
Yeah. Hallie, is there a song from the soundtrack that like really relates to, I don't know why I'm doing a punching motion, but you know, that like
well, I don't want to be basic, but Frozen was obviously, or Let It Go was obviously a great one.
I mean, it's a very powerful song.
And for the first time in forever is really cool.
Yeah, I do like that one. Well, we just get to see, I think it really lays the foundation for where both of the girls are, like post this traumatic thing, like a lot of these traumatic things that have happened to them, but like how they're dealing with depression and grief, and now their attachment styles and that sort of a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that song a lot too. I really need you to watch the second one or re-listen to the soundtrack, just because then I want to see how you feel about her other power ballad, Into the Unknown, versus like in the context of the movie, like versus Let It Go. Because I think as another Elsa fan, I just need to know your opinion. We'll have you on for another episode about that.
Yes, Frozen 2.
Yeah.
And so since you have to go soon, Hallie, do you have any like favorite themes or characters or quotes from the movie?
Favorite themes. I mean, I think it was interesting how, like you said, with the whole fear thing, how manipulative Hans was. Like it was kind of, I feel like it was really like scary, because it was like not only was he really manipulative, it was like, oh yeah, we are gonna kill her, and I was just like, wow, like I don't remember this being so
super dark,
harsh and violent. Yeah, and it was like, you know, he lied and said that she died. It was like all this stuff. I was like, wow, this is like really intense and really I really enjoyed like the duality of it, because it was very light-hearted, and you have Olaf and he's so cute and he runs around his little flurry, but then you have just this like really dark, heavy side of the movie, and I feel like it kind of flip-flopped back and forth, and it was just really, I don't know, I really liked that it was just so one way or the other, and not just kind of like I just feel like the storyline had a lot of depth, and it wasn't just like one character arc or one, you know, climactic thing. I feel like there was a lot of like underlying layers in it.
Yeah. Where like Hans didn't start off the villain, and like you really think this is gonna be a movie about true love, and then the twist happens and you're like, what?
Yeah.
I remember like watching that movie with my jaw just like dropped, and I was like in the middle of eating popcorn. I was like, what? It was so good. It was so good.
Also,
it's one
like
of those things that I wish I could witness for the first time again. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, like, another way that I relate to Anna is that give me an awkward redhead, and yeah, I would have fallen. I would have been tricked as well into, you know, almost getting married in a day.
You and your redheads.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, so like Hallie, you made a joke before we started recording about like how you were surprised, or maybe we had started recording, but before we got into the meat of the episode, about how you were surprised that Olaf was only in like the second half of the movie because he's like all the kids' favorite characters. I think Olaf is, surprisingly, upon this rewatch that I did, I think Olaf is my favorite character.
Oh, I was checking my notes, and I have a quote from Olaf, and he says love is putting someone else's needs before yours, which is like, I don't know, I didn't remember him being so I thought he was just like funny and silly character, and he's actually like really cute. Like he says something else like some people are worth melting for, and it's just like so he was
Yes.
so deep, and I just
Yeah.
remember him being like silly and like, oh look, I've been impaled.
Okay,
Yeah. Oh,
see,
look at that. I've been impaled. Yeah.
this is why I need you to watch the second, because he like starts developing more of a brain, I guess, and like he starts to get really deep and philosophical, and he's starting to like feel things and like really connect with his own humanity in some kind of way, his own sentientness. So it's really funny. So
A really
please.
funny quote from the second one, Hallie. He like it's right at the beginning when things start going wrong for them. He goes, "We're calling this controlling what you can when things feel out of control." I just thought that was so funny. Olaf, for me, definitely had a lot more depth than I realized as well, like upon this rewatch. And when he says some people are worth melting for, I just like started bawling because I was like, oh my God, I forgot about this quote. I forgot he says this, and it just hit me in the heart. But I think also the nuance of that quote and the nuance of the other quote that you mentioned about like love is putting someone else's needs before your own is like love is, it's not just putting someone else's needs before your own, but it's realizing that their needs are just as important as yours, right?
Like
Like,
acknowledging.
yeah, like it's not like putting everything before you, like in that people pleasing kind of way. We talked about this a little bit on our Giselle episode as well, about like, you know, sacrificing your own wants and needs for the sake of someone else, but realizing that their needs are just as important as yours. And if you can't like have that like equal balance of like, I'm supporting you in your needs, you're supporting me in my needs, you know, then then the conversation needs to happen.
Yeah, I think it's less about like putting someone else's needs above your own, but prioritizing both in a way that is healthy for the both of you, so that you don't fall into people pleasing and fawning and all that kind of
Well,
stuff.
and I think the movie has like a tone of kind of selfishness in the beginning, and it kind of has that arc of, they need to learn that lesson of being selfless for each other, for their sister, and letting, like, Elsa needing to let Anna in and let people help her. It's like she wanted to try to do everything on her own or just isolate herself, and she needed that support. She needed her sister. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of us have trouble like admitting that we need help, or just acknowledging it, or maybe just feel scared or ashamed of their feelings.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Yeah, I think we all need people like Anna. The Elsas need their Annas, because I definitely have friends who I think embody Anna a little bit more, and I do appreciate that. Even so, like, I think I mentioned this in the Giselle episode too, but like this the first half of this year has not been great, and I definitely went into like shutdown mode, but my friends were still texting me, they were still inviting me out, they didn't take offense to when I would like say no, or and they wouldn't like be too pushy about me getting out or like spending time with them. They like recognized I was going through my own thing, but like they kept reminding me that they were still there, and that was really really sweet and really beautiful. And I think that that is love in something small like that. I think a lot of times, especially in movies and in media, just because that's the nature of it, of those things, love seems like this really big grandiose gesture and like really over the top, but I think it's also important to remember that even though Anna showed love by, or like, an act of true love by sacrificing herself, her just being there and reminding Elsa that she wasn't alone is sometimes enough. And I think plants the seed that we then see grow in Elsa, of like the confidence and accepting herself and letting people in. So yeah, it's really cute.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that your comparison to it not having to be like a big gesture.
Yeah, love is the little things.
It is. It can be. Anyway, I know you have to go soonish. Are there any last things that you would like to say, comment on?
Well, I want to say thank you guys for having me. I feel like Heather and I have a very extensive, in-depth relationship that would probably need a podcast episode of its own. But I feel like just that at the end of the day, you know, just having that kind of like unconditional love and care for someone and not judging them no matter how they are. I feel like that's something that I find comes easier to me with her than like other friendships or relationships that I have. It's like find myself judging their actions and doing this and doing that, and it's like I feel like no matter what Heather does, I might get annoyed and I might brush it off, but it's like, you know, she's still my sister. She's still going to be there for me. She's still going to answer when I need to talk, and vice versa. Like we kind of act as each other's rocks. And, you know, I feel like I hope that more people have or can develop that kind of relationship with somebody, because I don't know, it's something that I need. And I'm glad I have you, Heather.
Yeah. And it's also
Oh.
nice that we're in different time zones, because if it's late, I know I can call her. And if it's early, she knows she can call me. So it's like, you know, we do just kind of like use each other as a sounding board sometimes of like, this is what I'm going through and I just need to vent to you about it because life is hard.
That's
Yeah.
so cute. I love it. That's so sweet. I definitely feel like I relate to that with my best friend. Like she's the kind of person that I just have so much unconditional love for, and I know she has it for me, and we've gone through our ups and downs where like we didn't talk for a year and it was like a whole thing, but I know that like she is, it's so cheesy, but like she is my person. And I know that she'll always be there for me, and very similar to what you said, Hallie, that like even if we are doing things the other person doesn't really agree or quote unquote approve of or whatever, that like it's always, we just, there's just always love, you know. And it's nice knowing that I have this person in my corner, and I will always have this person in my corner, because that makes life a little bit more bearable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on. This was so fun. It was nice to get the double HB experience.
Yes, yes. And if you want to follow my little sister, her handle is at not Hallie Berry, right?
Mm-hmm. Hallie.
Yeah, she got an I in it, but you can link to the show notes for that information as well, for her Instagram. And yeah, we'll keep you updated on any upcoming things. Hallie's thinking about starting a podcast herself, but that's in the very, very, very early like brain stages of development.
Yeah.
So
oh my God,
yeah.
how exciting. How fun.
And it's going to be, yeah, her idea is to have it be about like being a woman in audio engineering.
Yeah, because there's only 2% of women in the audio engineering industry, music industry, like doing sound in music or audio. So
whoa, yes. Oh, I'm here for it. I love it.
So yeah, so we'll keep you updated on all the information about Hallie's podcast if and when it happens. Hopefully, you know.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Love you.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.
Yay.
So
okay.
We'll continue the episode without her. Goodbye.
Bye. I think before we had to pivot into kind of a little bit of the music, because that's Hallie's area of expertise, I suppose. Some, I think we touched on it at the beginning, but some of the main messages or takeaways for me were like around feelings, you know, feel your feelings is the main thing that I think for me growing up, like I said, I was conditioned to believe that like you don't want to feel anything, or like you shouldn't feel too much in any sense of that phrase, like whether it be too much happiness or too much sadness or whatever, because it was always like invalidated or dismissed by my parents. Where like if I were super happy about something, they'd criticize it. If I was like super sad about something, they'd be like, get over it, or you know, people have it worse or whatever. So I that's why I think I relate to Elsa too, in that I just ended up trying to suppress a lot of feelings because I didn't have the safe space or the healthy outlet to express them. And also that hiding the feelings is not the same as controlling them. And we
Yeah.
see very clearly that like suppressing them doesn't mean you're managing them or processing them in a very healthy way, and they will find a way to come out. Like when she's holding the stuff at her coronation, like it's starting to get icy, or her powers are definitely reactionary to her feelings. And yeah, so all of that to say that we can try our best to like not acknowledge or not process, not feel, but the things will still come out in other ways, and it's important to recognize those different ways. I think like for me, it's when I'm starting to get like short or snappy with my boyfriend, or I'm just like overly irritated, and I'm like, okay, there's clearly something underlying here. Let me take a step back and do some self-reflection and process this a little bit differently. And I think that's like another great um another thing I like about therapy or coaching, or just like having that allotted space and time for a non-judgmental space and time to just let it out, let it go, as
Yeah.
Elsa would say.
Yeah, and I can relate to that a lot too, because it's like there are some feelings that you have that you feel like you shouldn't have, and then what happens is like you suppress them or they don't feel good. So it
Yeah.
sucks. Like it doesn't feel good to feel some of the things that you're feeling. Like if you're going through heartbreak, like that doesn't feel good, and you don't want to just like feel heartbreak, right? But something that I've kind of like realized through working with my therapist, and something that, you know, you can, it's just, you're right, it comes out in other areas of your life, is like the more that you decide you're not going to feel something or think something, like if there's a thought that you keep having, if you judge yourself for the thought or for the feeling, that makes it's like adding a whole new layer to the thought or the feeling too, is like that self-judgment that comes from it. And so like what's really important is to not only allow yourself to feel the things you're feeling or to have the thoughts you're having, but also not to judge them, and to acknowledge like, this is what I'm thinking right now, this is how I'm feeling right now. And
Yeah.
then instead of like judging yourself or stuffing it down, allowing yourself to recognize it and then try to move forward from it.
Yeah.
And a really great tool that happens in like meditation practices is like putting the thought on a leaf or a cloud and watching it float away, right? Like if you put it on a leaf and watch it float down a stream, or put it on a cloud and watch it, like of course that's easier said than done, and it comes with a lot of practice.
Yeah.
But like at least that way you're having the thought or the feeling and experiencing it, and rather than trying to stuff it down or bury it, you're acknowledging that it's there and then saying, this doesn't serve me, and so I'm just letting it go, like to bring back like let it go,
Let it go.
and then just like let it go. Because the thoughts and feelings, the more you try to stuff them down or hide them or bury them, the more they're going to come up in other areas of your life. And so, or they'll pop up when you least expect it, and you'll be like having a good moment or a great day, and then you'll suddenly that thought will come back and be like, this is that thought that I've had, right?
Right.
And it
Yeah.
just like it doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve us to dwell on these things. But like dwelling and experience and like feeling are like two different things, right? So it's like, I'm not going to dwell, I'm not going to wallow, but I am going to recognize and allow and try to move forward, you know?
No, that's a really good point, because I think oftentimes, especially for trauma survivors, that like if a thing keeps coming up or like you're still talking about it, people are like, why aren't you over this yet? You know, and it's not that we're not over it, it's that one, either we're still processing it, which like there is no timeline, there is no deadline for any of those things, or also like being able to talk about it more freely is part of the healing process, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked what you said about the meditation, because that was definitely like, I did not think I would like meditation. I was under the belief that meditation is sitting and having no thought, no feeling, and just like sitting in complete silence. But as someone who does internalize a lot of things, there is a lot of inner chatter. And it wasn't until I did a practice, and I don't remember which app I was using or whatever, but they made the analogy of like watching passing cars just like come and go. Because the whole point of meditation isn't to be sitting in complete silence, but it's to just accept the present moment for what it is with whatever comes up. But acknowledging that like if the thought keeps coming up, and the whole reason why you put it on the leaf, on the cloud, in a car, is that you'll just deal with it later. Or like some people do like the golden box thing where like a golden box comes down from the sky, put the thought in the box and let the box go down the stream, you know, because it's not that we're like letting it go and that we're just not going to deal with it. It's we're letting it go for now, because right now we are just accepting, like we are trying to focus on the peace that meditation can bring, or this is like our time to just breathe, pause before we tackle the give ourselves some breathing room before we tackle the thing that keeps coming up, or whatever. And I think what you were saying too about like judging ourselves for those thoughts, feelings, patterns, behaviors, you know, whatever they might be, I think a lot of that is like guilt versus shame, which versus or guilt versus shame, which I think Elsa definitely struggles with, because she inadvertently, on accident, hurts her sister while they're playing. And based on the reaction that everything gets, instead of having this like opportunity for healthy guilt of, oh no, I made a mistake, it quickly evolved into shame that lingered with her throughout her entire life, or up until, you know, this movie, until later in the movie, of, oh no, I'm the mistake, you know, my powers are the mistake. And I just want to highlight that real quick, that that's kind of like the difference between guilt and shame. Like there is such a thing as healthy guilt. Like when you make a mistake, it's okay to feel guilty about making the mistake. The issue comes when it turns away, it evolves from um a mistake was made, or I made a mistake, to I was the mistake, or it turns the focus away from the situation or from the action and more toward like yourself and your worth and who you are as like a person. And that definitely can like stay and linger with a person for a lot longer than acknowledging and absolving the guilt, I think, especially when, like Elsa, she has been repeatedly told that it's her powers, her issue, her thing that needs to be fixed or controlled, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah. And recognizing that like everybody makes mistakes, like people make mistakes, we all make mistakes, but those mistakes don't make us bad people.
Right. And I you know, perfectionism is kind of the thing I've been working on, that I try and help other people with. And so much of perfectionism is less that like I have to do and be perfect, and be free of mistakes, but also that like when a mistake does happen, it just like chips away at someone's worth and their value as a person. And that's not true, because we're human, we're innately imperfect. And as we've seen in Giselle and in Barbie, that like there is some beauty in not being perfect and not having it all figured out. And in this movie, I think too, be like letting go. We keep saying letting go, and every time I say it, I'm like like I cringe a little bit, and I'm also like ha ha ha.
Right.
That like letting go of the expectations, and like what Elsa does on the mountain, of letting go of like the right and the wrong and the rules that she's been confined by, or like the limiting beliefs that have been instilled in her, gives her the freedom to like really tap into her power. And we see how beautiful her power is. Like she makes this really pretty dress, and this, and Olaf, and the castle. And it's not until Anna comes back and she's reconfronted by all of the fear and shame and all of that, that her powers go back to being to reactionary and kind of quote unquote out of her control. And she creates like a scary snow golem, and you know, her ice gets really like pointy and sharp and scary. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also a commentary on decisions made out of fear, or decisions made from fear, rather than like empowered decisions. And it's not to say that like, you know, decisions you make when you're in fear are sometimes there to protect you, right? Like you're doing that to protect yourself or to protect someone else because you are afraid of what might happen. But I think like there are ways to recognize when you are making a decision out of fear rather than from a decision out of like empowerment or for the uh like what is here to better serve the greater good rather than like me making this decision out of fear, you know.
Yeah, it does feel like both Elsa and Anna react versus respond. Like that's something that comes up in therapy a lot, or just like general self-help is learning how to stop just reacting, because that's like when things are reactionary, they're very like much out of our control. And taking the time to like step back and respond from what you're saying, like a very empowered, intentional, thoughtful place. um because I think it's those reactions that it's just like habitual, it's second nature, and the only way really to like break a habit is to be intentional and thoughtful about it, and try really hard to do something differently. And that takes a lot of time and practice. And like with Elsa, you know, she kind of, not I don't want to use the word revert, but that's the only word I can think of, is she does, like, even though she has this really great moment where she's finally connecting to her powers and she feels really good about herself, she goes back to reacting when Anna shows up. And I think that's very relatable to a lot of us, that we can put in so much work to undo a pattern, thought, behavior, whatever, but then something happens and we respond that way just because it's been a defense mechanism or a coping mechanism, or you know, a way that we are familiar with. um and that's not always a bad thing, because then you have the opportunity to recognize that that has happened, and you recognize and acknowledge that this is my either body or brain's way of trying to keep me safe, because we know how to handle this in this way. um and now I'm going to try and like do the different thing to make it
Yeah.
more of a habit. um Oh, another like message or takeaway I had this most recent watch through is that parents definitely have a lot of power over one's perception of themselves. I think for Elsa, we've talked about Elsa at length, and like her perception of herself is like being scary, being a monster, being something that needs to be controlled, or that she's out of control and needs to be contained in some kind of way. But I think for Anna, her perception is that even though we don't really see it outright, I could potentially see this belief that like she, I don't know, like in a weird way, that like she wasn't enough. Like she wasn't enough to hold her parents' attention as much as Elsa held theirs. And it makes sense then, of course, as to why when other people are coming to the castle for the very first time, or she meets Hans or whatever, that she's like excited. She's excited to
Yeah.
have the opportunity to be acknowledged when she hasn't for like her entire life. And I think too, in meeting new people, they don't have a pre-existing perception of you, kind of sort of in a way. So she's like, this is my opportunity to like put my best foot forward and be as like good and acceptable and charming and cute as possible, so that I can finally find where I belong to, because it's not, clearly it's not here in this castle, because my sister doesn't even want me, you know, that kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and like we mentioned briefly earlier about that like fear of abandonment creating her anxious attachment style.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I think it's like I think it, you know, if we had like some sort of attachment expert on this podcast to talk, I think they could talk at length about how like Elsa is the embodiment of avoidant attachment, and
Totally.
Anna is the embodiment of like an anxious attachment. And sort of her like desire to cling to anything that sort of not like anything that gives her attention, because that does sound sort of desperate, but like that is what the anxious attachment style does. It like latches onto anything that sort of gives it like a sense of hope, and then you're like, okay, great, this is my sense of hope, I'm going to stay here, and I'm going to stay here as long as I can. And sometimes people who have that anxious attachment, like we were mentioning with like Elsa making decisions from fear, and like going back to like, you know, using her, like being afraid of hurting her sister and all of that, like Anna's anxious attachment shows up in making in her Anna making decisions from fear shows up in her anxious attachment of like, I'm going to decide to marry this man after one day. That's a decision not only probably made from like the Disney fantasy world of just like how true love works in Disney, right? But like that's a decision that she made from fear, because this is the first person who has showed her love and affection since
she
was
doesn't
a
want
child.
it to go away. Yeah,
exactly. So that's like that's what anxious attachment looks like, you know, in real life, like as adults, you know, like not that people who identify as having anxious attachment would marry someone after a day,
no.
but it is very hard to let go of what you perceive as a positive, like it's very hard to let go of a situation even though you know it's not good for you, because you're afraid that there is no, like there's not something better,
there's not
gonna
exactly. Yeah, no, I totally get that. And we definitely see more of her anxious attachment with Elsa in the second movie, very much so. I think in the second movie I actually like Anna more, even though she's like way more codependent, but I think that's like her journey is learning that one, I think she also veers into people pleasing a little bit, where like everyone's happiness falls on her. She has to make sure Elsa's happy and okay. She has to make sure the kingdom is okay. She has to make sure Kristoff is okay and like their relationship is okay, or whatever. And she doesn't really check in with herself to make sure she's okay, because it's everyone else's happiness dictating her own happiness. And that is very valid given what they've gone through, and it makes sense, of course, in the same way that like now that she and Elsa are reconnected and they're close and they have like a really good relationship, that she's scared of that going away. She's scared of Elsa going away again.
Yeah, and it really comes out in the first song that she sings in the second one, called like Nothing Ever Changes or something, like I can't remember what it's.
Some things never change.
Yeah, some things never change, because it's like that, because like everything changes all the time, and I think the song is sort of pointing to the fact of like where she is mentally is just like is like clinging to the fact that like I finally have everything that I've wanted, and I really don't want that to change, you know.
Yeah,
and of course it does, obviously, like through the course of the movie it all of it changes, but like that like desire for things not to change because it's finally the way that she wants it to be, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's another reason why I relate to Elsa, is she definitely has that like dismissive or avoidant attachment style, or even like disorganized or fearful. In development, like in the developmental years, disorganized attachment usually means that like the person who is the source of nurturing and love, like your parents, is also the source of harm. And I think we see that a lot in her powers, and maybe a little bit with her parents, because it is really interesting. Right before they leave for the trip, like Anna runs up and gives them a hug, but Elsa like bows to them. So there's like definitely, I think we could do a whole other episode on that dynamic and that relationship, but I think there's definitely something there about the way Elsa's relationship with her parents influenced her attachment style. So yeah. I think another like message or takeaway that I really liked in this movie is how depression and anxiety can look different. I think they both show different symptoms, because I think there's like a general idea that depression is like sadness and anxiety is like fear. But we see that in both, it displayed in very, very different ways, and that doesn't negate anyone's experience about those things.
Yeah.
Like Elsa definitely goes into like shutdown, isolation, out of both depression and anxiety, and then Anna is definitely like, I need people, like I need reassurance that everything's going to be okay. She definitely relies more on the external cues, or even I think she even might get a little, not that we really ever see this, but it feels like she might have been a little avoidant in dealing with the grief and depression and stuff. I would like to have seen that explored a little bit more, but that's okay.
Yeah.
um
No, I get that. I think that's another reason why I relate to her as a character, is because like that is how my depression and anxiety like presents itself. Like, of course, there's always the depression of like not wanting to do anything.
Totally.
Like,
Yeah.
but like the consistent need for reassurance and that everything's going to be okay, and that I'm not doing it, like the external validation of like my life's not going to fall apart and everything's going to be okay and I'm not as bad as I think I am, like all of that. Like for me, the way I deal with it is very external. I'm also an external processor.
Mm-hmm.
So like the way that I deal with my problems is by talking about them. Like it's hard for me to internalize things and to sit with my thoughts and to journal. Like I do like to journal and that kind of thing, because in a way it can become external just by getting it out of my brain. But like talking about things and getting them like out of my body is like the way that
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to process them. So I feel like Anna is very similar in that way of just like I need to have people, I need to have someone to like externalize this with to get it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely relate to Elsa. And I think a lot of that too was her parents. Like they just kind of shut her in a room and
Mm-hmm.
made her deal with her things, which was like obviously not healthy for a child's development or confidence or empowerment. But I mean, we've talked about this at length in other episodes about how like I would play board games by myself and I was very like self-sufficient and hyper independent in that way. And it definitely carried with me into adulthood. Like even now, I have a very great supportive loving boyfriend, and there are some times where I will go things or like I will apologize. Like if I just start crying about missing my dog, I'm like apologizing to him and he's like, what are you apologizing for? Like it's it's okay. Or like I feel sometimes guilty coming with him and being like, I had a moment about Bams and I'm really sad. Like I'm scared almost to talk about it, because growing up I never had, if I remember distinctly, like one of my friends passed away over the summer. I was in like third grade, and maybe I have talked about it on this podcast. I don't remember.
Yeah, I remember. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she drowned, and a few years later I was supposed to swim at the pool that she drowned in and I didn't want to, and I went to my mom about it and she just like literally pushed me aside and left the room. So I relate to Elsa in being more of an internal processor, in that I never had the adult or like just anyone really to talk to, because I believed I was too much. I was a burden. I didn't want to make anyone I didn't want to make anyone else sad, that kind of a thing. So I've gotten pretty good at just being there for myself in that way. And there are times when that has been necessary and that's like important for my own processing. And then I think once I have kind of done that, it kind of feels like checkpoints, like, okay, I'm going to take this time to do this for myself, and then when I feel ready, I'm going to move forward and start externalizing it. It's kind of like a process for me. Um and then, yeah. Another thing I thought of was that even though Hans is like definitely the villain of this movie, I think a lot of it, the main villain is fear. Um
Mhm.
Fear like that comes within oneself, and then obviously other people's fears of Elsa, like that freaking Duke of Weaseltown, Wesselton, whatever, and
Yeah.
Wesselton. I have, what did he say? Like, this isn't my favorite quote, but it's something I used to quote on the daily with my friends, was like when he's dancing with Anna and he's like a chicken with the face of a monkey, I fly.
Yeah, that's a
um
fun there. That dance scene is a fun scene.
it is fun. It is really cute seeing Anna and Elsa like have a moment. I don't know if that's like the first time they've talked since their parents died or whatever, but it's kind of cute watching them like reconnect and stuff before Elsa shuts down again.
Yeah. Speaking of quotes and speaking of what you just said about fear being the villain of the movie, is one of the very first lines, like when it's like at the very beginning after Anna gets after Elsa hurts Anna and they go to the trolls, and the trolls are sort of like, you know, it's a good thing it happened to her head. We don't know if we'd be able to heal it if it was her heart. But the grandpappy troll warns them that fear will be their enemy. And fear was like, even with that prophecy of like fear will be your enemy, that I think like created fear around like, what does this mean? Like, you know, and then the fear just like it like snowballed. So it's like grandpappy troll prophesized the fear being the enemy, but then, you know, by having that prophecy, it actually almost did more harm than good.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of like planted the seed of fear within them already, or like just kind of fueled that fire in a sense. But like you said, I think by the end of the movie we see that love, even if, or what am I trying to say here, that love is the antidote, the antithesis to fear. And I think it's not so much that it's like it's not so much that it's you have to be devoid of fear or that there's only love. I think part of Elsa's journey, part of Anna's journey, part of like this whole movie and also in real life is like loving every part and aspect to yourself. So it's not like only loving the good things and trying to dismiss or hide the bad things, but it's also like hiding the things that you are quote unquote afraid of, or like that aren't so easy to love. I think sometimes we have this idea, especially through pop psychology on social media, that when we talk about loving ourselves, it's just loving the good things or loving the things that we do well. When in reality, it is like, no, like loving yourself as a whole. Because when we try to dismiss or hide the things that aren't so easy to love, we just repeat the cycle that we've grown up in. And that doesn't serve anyone, because then we're also repeating, we're like continuing the cycle and being an example of the things that we're trying to heal from.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But speaking of quotes, what's your favorite quote from the movie?
I said it at the beginning. Some people are worth melting for. I really really struck me. Struck a chord with me. Yeah, because that's an example of love, right?
Yeah. That's how I feel about my best friend. Like if I were Olaf, like she's someone I would melt for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite jokes that kind of relates to body image, you know, like sometimes we talk about on here about how like there's some jokes made in poor taste, da 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 da. But there's a joke that he like, it's like when he falls off the mountain and his body is like all misshaped, like his head is where his torso should be and his butt is on his head, whatever. And he goes, "Man, I'm out of shape." Like I thought that was, because it's true, he was not in correct form, you know, like
Yes.
so I thought that was like a like that's, if you're gonna make jokes like that, like that's a good way to make a joke like that, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I agree. I never thought about that before, but if you're going to talk about being out of shape, it's not about someone's physique or health. It is them just not being in assembled correctly, I guess.
Yeah. I thought it was perfect. I was like, yes, great. Love it.
This movie is just like a really fun time, but I do think it can be a very good conversation starter for kids. And maybe this is why so many kids like it, is because they have something to point to, that like when they're feeling sad, when they're feeling hopeless, when they're just like feeling down or something, they can point to Elsa and either say like, this is how I'm reacting to the thing, where I feel like I'm shutting down, or they'll point to Anna and say like, oh, I see this in myself where I like need people, or I'm feeling like I need to be seen or noticed or witnessed in some kind of way. Or even later on when Elsa's like suddenly like more feeling, when Elsa's feeling more empowered, they can be like, oh, Elsa went through it, so can I. Or like, this is how she kind of moved through it, and her sister was there for her, and blah, blah, blah. And so I can try and see if these things will work for me as well.
Yeah.
So I think it like, I mean, the whole premise of our podcast, and like we said in our very, very first episode, is I just love that we have these kinds of movies to give kids the opportunity and the thing to point to, and like, I don't know, just like give them a point of reference. And now as adults, like as we're going on our own healing journey or inner child healing, whatever, having these things that meant so much to us as kids and kind of rewatching them through the lens of mental health and seeing how the characters we love so much have influenced us or can be an example for us on our own journeys. And I think that's just really freaking cool. And I love that we have that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I don't really have a favorite quote so much as like a favorite song, I think, or like different lyrics throughout the songs, especially a lot of Elsa's stuff just around concealing, don't feel, be the good girl you always have to be. Like I definitely relate to that. And then Let It Go, when she says no right, no wrong, no rules for me, I'm free. Like I really like that lyric. And also, it's funny how some distance makes everything seem small. The fears that once controlled me can't get to me at all. I love that one. That was definitely pivotal when I like moved out of my childhood home and was like living on my own, and I finally felt like I could be me. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Anyway, 10 out of 10. Love this movie. And if you haven't watched the second one, it's all of these things we talked about with like attachment styles and coping mechanisms and all of those things are definitely just more addressed in that movie. So I think definitely worth a watch. Dare I say it's better than the first, but I don't know yet. I don't know anymore.
Yeah. I know the second one gets a little bit of criticism for using Indigenous people to like tell the story at the very beginning. The way it's sort of like, and then they turned on us. But I think it's like mended by the end, I hope.
Have you not seen the second one?
I have. I just don't remember how it ends.
Oh, yes. I mean, I won't spoil anything, but yeah, if you keep watching it, they definitely address it more.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in. And thanks, Hallie, if you've made it this far in the episode, for being on. And yeah.
All right.
We'll see y'all next. We'll talk to y'all next time.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Mental Health Multiverse podcast and for spending time with us, HB and LB. Special shout out to our musical composer, Little HB.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, feel free to share it with others, post about it on social media, leave a rating and review, or become an exclusive Patreon member to see bonus and additional content.
To stay up to date on all things MHM, you can follow us on Instagram at Heather Boddy and at littlebit_notbroken, or subscribe to our YouTube channel to see our faces and watch some fun bloopers. You can find all of these links in the show notes.
Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.